fragile but highly consequential diplomatic moment is unfolding in Islamabad, where the United States and Iran have entered direct high-level negotiations for the first time in decades. These talks, brokered by Pakistan, are not routine diplomacy. They are part of a broader effort to stabilize a rapidly escalating regional conflict that has already reshaped geopolitical dynamics across the Middle East and beyond. The negotiations come in the immediate aftermath of a temporary ceasefire agreed earlier in April 2026, following weeks of intense military confrontation. That ceasefire, mediated through Pakistan, is limited in scope and duration, leaving both sides under pressure to either convert it into a lasting settlement or risk a return to open conflict. At the heart of the current diplomatic storm is a claim that has captured global attention, that the United States has agreed to release billions of dollars in frozen Iranian assets. Iranian sources have framed this as a major breakthrough, even portraying it as a sign that Washington is beginning to shift its position under pressure. However, the United States has firmly denied that any such agreement has been reached, exposing the deep mistrust and strategic maneuvering that define these talks. The claim itself is not insignificant. According to Iranian officials, the funds in question, estimated at around $6 billion, are tied to oil revenues that were frozen under U.S. sanctions, particularly after 2018. These assets have been a central issue in U.S.-Iran relations for years, symbolizing both economic pressure and diplomatic leverage. Iranian sources have suggested that the proposed release of these funds is linked to broader strategic arrangements, particularly those involving the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow but critically important waterway carries a significant portion of global oil shipments, making it one of the most strategically sensitive points in the world. Any agreement involving its security would have far-reaching implications for global markets and energy stability. However, Washington's denial of the asset release claim highlights a deeper reality. Both sides are engaged not only in negotiation, but also in a battle of narratives.
Iran's public assertion of a first big win can be interpreted as an attempt to project strength and momentum, both domestically and internationally. At the same time, the U.S. response appears designed to maintain leverage and avoid appearing to concede ground prematurely. This dynamic is not new.
It reflects a long-standing pattern in U.S.-Iran relations, where public statements are often used as tools of negotiation. Each side seeks to shape perceptions, influence expectations, and strengthen its bargaining position, all while keeping actual concessions ambiguous. The Islamabad talks themselves are historic. They represent the highest level direct engagement between the two countries in decades, involving senior officials with significant authority on both sides. On the American side, top leadership figures are participating, while Iran's delegation includes powerful political and military-linked officials, underscoring the seriousness of the moment. Pakistan's role as mediator has been pivotal. By hosting the talks, Islamabad has positioned itself as a key diplomatic actor, capable of bridging one of the world's most entrenched geopolitical divides. The involvement of Pakistan's leadership reflects both the urgency of the situation and the complexity of the issues at stake. The agenda of the talks is extensive and deeply interconnected. It includes not only the issue of frozen assets, but also ceasefire arrangements, sanctions relief, regional security dynamics, and the future of Iran's nuclear program. Each of these issues is highly sensitive, and progress in one area is often dependent on concessions in another. Iran's negotiating position has been clear and consistent. Tehran has insisted that meaningful progress cannot occur without concrete steps, particularly in the form of financial relief and guarantees related to regional conflicts. The release of frozen assets has been presented as a key precondition, reflecting its importance both economically and symbolically. At the same time, Iran's demands extend beyond financial issues. The country has called for broader changes, including a ceasefire in Lebanon, reparations related to the conflict, and recognition of its strategic interests in the region. These demands reflect a broader strategy aimed at consolidating Iran's position as a major regional power. The regional context in which these talks are taking place cannot be ignored. The conflict that began earlier in 2026 has drawn in multiple actors and created a volatile environment marked by military strikes, proxy battles, and escalating tensions. The situation in Lebanon remains particularly sensitive, with ongoing violence threatening to derail diplomatic efforts. The Strait of Hormuz remains one of the most critical flashpoints. Iran's ability to influence or disrupt shipping through this narrow passage gives it significant leverage in negotiations. At the same time, the United States and its allies view the security of the strait as as essential to global economic stability. This makes any discussion involving Hormuz highly complex and strategically significant. Inside Iran, the political landscape is also evolving. Following the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei earlier in the conflict, power dynamics within the country have shifted. Mojtaba Khamenei has emerged as a central figure in Iran's leadership structure with significant influence over strategic decisions, even as his public profile remains limited. This evolving leadership structure adds another layer of complexity to the negotiations. Decision-making authority in Iran is not always transparent, and multiple power centers may influence the direction of policy. This can make it difficult for external actors to assess Iran's intentions and predict its next moves. At the same time, Iranian officials have sought to project unity and control. Messages attributed to the leadership have emphasized both restraint and resolve, signaling a willingness to engage in negotiations while also warning of potential consequences if talks fail. The United States, for its part, is approaching the talks with caution. Washington's strategy appears to focus on maintaining leverage while exploring the possibility of a broader agreement. The denial of any asset release deal suggests that U.S. officials are unwilling to make public concessions without securing significant commitments in return. This cautious approach is shaped by both strategic and political considerations. Any agreement involving sanctions relief or financial concessions is likely to face scrutiny both domestically and internationally. As a result, American negotiators are under pressure to ensure that any deal is not only effective, but also defensible. The issue of frozen assets has long been a central point of contention between the two countries. Since the Iranian Revolution, financial restrictions have been used as a key tool of pressure by the United States. Over the years, these assets have been repeatedly discussed in negotiations, often serving as both leverage and incentive. In recent years, limited access to some funds has been granted under strict conditions, often tied to humanitarian purposes. However, full access has remained elusive, making it one of the most persistent and symbolic issues in U.S.-Iran relations. In the current negotiations, the stakes are even higher. The outcome of these talks could influence not only bilateral relations, but also the broader geopolitical landscape. A successful agreement could lead to greater stability in the region, improved economic conditions, and a reduction in the risk of further conflict. On the other hand, failure could have serious consequences. It could lead to renewed hostilities, further disruptions in global energy markets, and increased instability across the Middle East. Amid these high-stakes discussions, messaging has become a critical tool. Iran's claim of a major breakthrough can be seen as an attempt to shape expectations and influence the negotiating dynamic. By suggesting that the United States is already making concessions, Tehran may be seeking to create momentum and pressure Washington into formalizing those concessions. At the same time, the U.S. denial serves its own strategic purpose. By rejecting the claim, Washington reinforces its position that no concessions have been made without reciprocal commitments. This helps maintain leverage and prevents premature expectations from taking hold. This interplay of claims and counterclaims is a hallmark of high-stakes diplomacy. It reflects not only the complexity of the issues involved, but also the deep mistrust that continues to define U.S.-Iran relations. The human and economic dimensions of the situation are also significant. The recent conflict has taken a heavy toll, affecting millions of people across the region. Economic hardship, displacement, and insecurity have become part of daily life for many. For ordinary Iranians, access to frozen assets could translate into tangible improvements, from better access to goods and services to greater economic stability. But for policymakers, the issue remains deeply complex, balancing humanitarian considerations with strategic priorities. As negotiations continue, attention is likely to shift toward the details of any potential agreement. Questions remain about how an asset release would be structured, what conditions would be attached, and how compliance would be monitored. These technical aspects often determine whether a deal can be successfully implemented. Despite the challenges, the very fact that these talks are taking place is significant. It reflects a recognition on both sides that dialogue, however difficult, is preferable to continued conflict. One senior U.S. leader issued a stark warning during the talks, reflecting the cautious and sometimes confrontational tone of the negotiations. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find the negotiating team is not that receptive. The statement underscores the tension and skepticism that continue to define the process. Even as both sides explore the possibility of an agreement, they remain wary of each other's intentions. As the talks move forward, the outcome remains uncertain. The claim of a first big win may prove to be premature, or it may signal the beginning of a broader breakthrough. What is clear is that the stakes are extraordinarily high, and the path to any agreement will be anything but straightforward.